morning, students. It's Miss Hamilton. So today you're going to learn how to make homemade cupcakes. Not semi-homemade, but homemade. We're also going to be making homemade frosting. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about our ingredients. We have milk. You can use whole milk if you have it. You have skim, 2%. I'm happy to be using 2% today because that's what I have at my house. The recipe actually calls for 2 cups of granulated sugar, okay? Just pure sugar that you use all the time at your house. It calls for, let's see, a teaspoon of vanilla, a half a teaspoon of almond extract. It also calls for about a half a teaspoon of salt and some baking powder as well. The key to this one is we're actually using cake flour today. It's just a little bit more fine, it's not so heavy, and hopefully after we pre-sift it, I did pre-sift the flour, but I'm gonna sift it again today and show you when we're actually making this. It calls for 2 sticks of real butter, and they're unsalted, and it calls for 4 eggs. So the first thing that you wanna do is you wanna cream your butter and your sugar together. So these are the 2 sticks. Put this right in here, side here, okay? If I were making a cake, I would save my wrappers and then take them and spread all over the baking pans and sprinkle some flour on them, and then you'd be good to go. But we're gonna be making cupcakes instead. It's just a really good handy trick I learned on Pinterest, that when you have these wrappers, it still has some butter on them, so you can either take a nice little rubber scraper that I'm gonna use here, like this one, and get off all the excess butter, because we definitely need it. And then put that in my garbage bowl. Like I said, otherwise you could take a baking pan today and then spread it on top of that if you wanted to. Okay, now your recipe I know you're not gonna believe this, but it calls for 2 cups of sugar. So we're gonna pour that right on top. Now, if you have a KitchenAid at home, go ahead and use your KitchenAid. You know, I'm still kind of old school, so I'm just gonna, the butter's kind of soft. I'm just gonna go ahead and use my electric mixer. If you want to use your KitchenAid, you go right ahead. So it's kind of soft. I actually got it out last night. I'm going to use my little finger because it's clean. Okay, I got it out last night and I am good to go. So here we go. The reason why I got the butter out last night is I wanted to soften up. Okay. Here. Next, what I'm going to do, if I had my KitchenAid out, I would just start cracking my eggs and putting them in as it's still mixing. But I'm going to go ahead and just mix 2 together. You can do 2 together at the same time. I wouldn't do all 4 at the same time. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna stop here and I'll be back in a few minutes. I'm gonna finish cracking the eggs and adding the other 2 in. Okay, so it looks nice and smooth. Okay, you can kind of see it's nice and smooth. It's all the sugar. It looks kind of like it's kind of grainy, and that's because that's the real sugar that we're using right now. So the recipe calls for it's actually half a teaspoon of vanilla. You do not want to put more than that, otherwise it's gonna be too flavorful. I'm gonna actually measure it off to the side. It's very, very strong. Okay, that is that was the almond extract, a half a teaspoon of almond extract, and then this recipe also calls for a teaspoon of vanilla. Okay, so in case I said that wrong, it's 1 teaspoon of vanilla and a half a teaspoon of almond extract. I kind of like using almond extract. Just gonna mix that together. Then what you want to do is now it's time to start adding all of your dry ingredients. So the recipe calls for pre-sifted flour. So what we're going to do here is I've already got pre-measured the flour. Okay, and we're going to actually add it to that in just a second. But the first thing that we're going to want to do is I'm not going to use a sifter. I'm going to go ahead and use my strainer and do that. But the recipe actually calls for 3 teaspoons of baking powder, okay? I'm gonna use the opposite end this time since my other side is all kind of wet And I'm just gonna press it right against, oops, there you go. Okay, and I'm just gonna go ahead and add it to my flour. That's 1, oops, and 2. And then it calls for half a teaspoon of salt. And again, I always like to measure it off to the side because if it's, there you go. And I'll just put that right in there. The recipe calls for you to kind of do pre-sift. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna scoop this together. I'll show you. I'm gonna take my bowl, just like this, and I'm just gonna sift it. Okay, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna scoop up some more. And then right now, I'm gonna go ahead and mix this. Now, if you can get it closer right now, you'll see it starting to get light and fluffy. So I'm gonna take a second batch. You notice I didn't do it all at the same time. Now, if you had a KitchenAid or a standing mixer, you could be adding this as it's going in a circular motion. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna continue mixing this thoroughly. Probably got 2 more sets and I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I've done, you've seen me cream together the sugar and the butter together. And then we added the vanilla and the almond extract. We then added our eggs, mixed all that together. I then added baking powder along with salt to my pre-sifted flour mixture, and then I sifted it. As I was incorporating the flour to the cream mixture, I started adding the milk. That's one part you didn't see, so don't forget. If it's looking kind of thick, it's like, oh my gosh, I forgot my milk. Make sure you add your milk. Then you can alternate flour, milk, flour, milk, flour, milk. So you can see this is what it looks like. If you want to get a little bit closer, you can see that. And then what you want to do is scrape the sides, just like this. Again, this is homemade batter. This is not from a box. It's homemade batter. So we actually are going to make homemade cupcakes today. The next thing that you're going to want to do is have a pre-lined muffin pan, just like this. And I have 2 of them set out. You also want to use a scooper. Now at this time, this is when you can actually decide, okay, how do I want to make these cupcakes? Do I want to put chocolate chips in them? Do I want to put sprinkles in them? You know, that's just really going to be up to you. So for right now, we're going to go ahead and unplug this, move this off to the side, and you can, like I said, just determine what you want to do. I'm going to go ahead and just leave them right now. Just vanilla. Take a nice little scoop, scoop it right inside there, just like this. And you can see it just kind of plops out. The reason why you use a scoop is so they all stay the same. Nice even proportions. Okay, it's a little bit thicker than if you were to use a cake mix. Number 1, in a cake mix, we use oil. Today we use butter. Butter is gonna keep it a little bit more solid. You may even notice we're probably gonna get more cupcakes out of this than normal. If you wanna take some Oreos and crush up some Oreos and add to the cake mixture, you can. If you wanna add some peanut butter to it, you can. You can take some semi-sweet chocolate chips that are melted along with some cocoa powder and make a chocolate cake mixture, you can do that. Let me scoop that out. If you want to take half your mixture, put in here, put some jam in there, and put the rest of the mixture on top, you can do that. So when you're making homemade cupcakes, you know, the possibilities are endless. You can actually take some food coloring and add that. Last year I had a group, they took some blueberries and added that to their mixture, and then they had a blueberry frosting. I've had a group put fresh strawberries and some strawberry puree into their mixture. I had a group, like I said, they actually did Oreos, okay? But you gotta be careful when you do Oreo cake mixture and you add Oreo frosting, it's a little bit too much. So they found out that it tastes a little bit too Oreo-y, like as we called it. Just keep scooping it in here. You can see I definitely have more than I need, but I'll just keep scooping. Might end up, there you go. Yeah, I have a little bit more in here, that's okay. Now the thing is though, you don't want to overfill them because what's going to happen is they just may overflow. So I'm going to kind of look at them. I'm going to kind of shake it just a tad bit. Take some of my batter, add a little to some of them that look like they're kind of not 2/3 full, and just add just a little extra. Some of them, they look like they're okay. Looks like that one needs a little bit. Definitely that one right there. And I think we're good. So what I'm going to do, on the box, it says to put them in on 350, which I already have my oven on, and I'm going to put them in for about 18 minutes. And then I'm going to pull them out. In the meantime, we're going to make some frosting. Hi, you guys. Hey, so these are the cupcakes, and if I lay them flat, you can kind of see that maybe next time we could put a little bit more of the cake, homemade cake mix in them, because they just really don't rise that well. You also notice that they're kind of golden brown. Well, let me tell you why. It's the real butter that we used, and that's why they're a golden brown. I also reduced the temperature while it was in there. I went, oh my gosh, anytime you use a non-stick, a dark, you need to reduce the temperature to 325. And so they actually did bake, but next time if you reduce it to 325 for 18 minutes, they're not going to be this golden brown, but they will be some golden brown because of the butter. And like I said, next time I think I probably would add a little bit more just so they can rise, because it looks like they're not going to fall off to the sides like a cake batter from a box would do. So I'm getting ready to start making frosting, and we'll be right back.